All right, make sure that we are on. All right, what's up, everybody? What's up? What up? What up? What up? Welcome to the Walk of Shame. It's your man Ant Walker here, live after UFC in Vancouver. I think this is Fight Night 159, if I'm not mistaken. So Justin Gaethje just knocks out Donald Cerrone in the first round. Can't say I'm too shocked by that result. That's kind of what I thought would happen there. It just seems like Donald Cerrone he's notoriously a slow starter, and he does need a certain level of space to be able to operate correctly. I know he's kind of fixed that problem in its worst extreme version over the years, but it still remains like he needs some level of space in order to do what he does. I don't think we'll see someone like a Nate Diaz type performance where someone just goes in there and just gets in his face and just purely outboxes him and keeps him out of his kick range. I don't think we'll see anything like that again, but the type of pressure that Justin Gaethje puts on makes it very, very, very difficult to really do anything when you're Cerrone, when you need, one, some space to operate, and two, you start off so slow. Gaethje just immediately jumps in your face and starts getting it cracking just immediately. And even this version of Gaethje, which is a lot more patient and measured than we had seen before, he does need to you need to address that. You can't go in with the simple approach of just trying to feel things out with someone like Justin Gaethje in front of you. So no shock there that Justin Gaethje gets the win as early as he did. So I guess the main surprise. Well, first, actually, before we even go into what's next for these two gentlemen, shout out to Rob Iman in the chat saying welcome back. Thank you. Happy to be back. It's been a little while since I've done the Walk of Shame, so I'm gonna try to be more consistent now. Had some personal stuff that was holding up the train or whatever, but we'll get back at it, and the Walk of Shame will be a regular part of your MMA diet, should you choose to consume it. So, but toward the end, might have a few little nuggets I want to drop on you guys and some ideas I want to bounce off you. So definitely want your feedback. But anyway, let's get back to these fights. I definitely understand why Justin Gaethje was so pissed off at Jaron Vallel for the stoppage. Jaron Vallel has consistently been one of the worst referees in mixed martial arts for several years now, at least. I think it was a recent event. I think it was the last event in Edmonton where it looked like he did a better job. He did a much better job than I'm used to seeing him do, but this just kind of brought back memories. Like, I'm reminded of being there at UFC 184 at the Staples Center, where he allowed Mark Munoz to get blasted into hell. I can also think back to I want to say that was 213 maybe. That was in Edmonton where Gilbert Melendez was getting leg kicked to death by Jeremy Stevens, and while it was very clear that Melendez could barely stand up, that Vallel was admonishing him for falling to his back after taking leg kicks, and it was just like, man, you're not seeing what's going on here. You're not seeing a fighter who is unable to really defend himself properly. So once again, we see an error in judgment. To have Cowboy clearly out on his feet and falling face first and just kind of sitting there, and Gaethje lands a couple shots and looks at him like, what up, dude? Like, why are you not stopping this? And he's just standing there at this weird spot where you get close enough to the fighter, and perhaps maybe I'm not sure if he actually made contact or not, if he bumped into him or not. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to look at a replay again. But I do know he was close enough to where you're starting to now really interfere with the action in the worst possible way. Because Gaethje at this point, knowing that there should be a stoppage, knowing that he has knocked out Cerrone and he doesn't want to give him any undue damage, any more unnecessary damage, I should say, you're close enough to now where that initiation to stop the action is happening. You are right there. So to walk there, stop, just one step shy of that, back up, come back in, and it was really bizarre. It was really bizarre, and once again, a poor performance by Cerrone Villel. So I'm not understanding why this man is still refereeing high-level mixed martial arts, particularly main events. A main event of this magnitude, a main event with this level of consequence and relevance to the rankings, to the title picture. This is the guy. Yeah, I'm not quite getting it. I'm not quite getting it. But all right, so let's go ahead and talk about what happens next with these guys. So I expected that this fight was kind of the winner of this would kind of put themselves in the McGregor sweepstakes. Both of these men have been linked to fight Conor McGregor at some point very recently. I believe both over the summer, if I'm not mistaken. Donald Cerrone, of course, looked like he was going to fight Conor. And they had their Twitter exchanges, and there was like the picture on Twitter, I think it was, or Instagram or something, with a bottle of Proper 12 next to a bottle of Budweiser, and this was kind of like getting everybody hyped up that these two were going to meet each other. It's a fight that both of them wanted. That ended up falling apart because of the main event, co-main event thing. And now we're seeing the UFC kind of realizing, oh, that was pretty stupid. And now you're putting Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz in a main event as a 5-rounder. So I guess they're learning from their mistakes on that regard. But also Justin Gaethje was supposed to fight Conor McGregor at one point. And that was a fight that was seriously being negotiated and in the works. And then Conor broke his hand in training. So that's why we didn't get to see that fight. So, it seems logical that whoever won this fight would be, next up to get the Conor red panty night. It's kind of what I expected. So, of course, the other option is the winner of what better be Tony Ferguson challenging Khabib Nurmagomedov. It better be that. So that was an option to call out the winner of that. And we see Gaethje took that approach. But then also, one thing that didn't get any mention, at least by the two fighters, I thought that the winner of this would certainly have something to say about Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal and this baddest motherfucker title. Because when you think of BMFs in the UFC, Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal certainly fit that bill. But I think we can also say Justin Gaethje and Donald Cerrone fit that bill as well. And the winner of this fight would make a logical next contender, I guess, if the BMF belt is a real thing that's going to continue on. That would make a lot of sense. But for that to not get mentioned at all, kind of surprised me. And Gaethje making it very clear he wants the actual lightweight title, and he's going to go after that. But the danger in calling that one out when, what's going to happen? We have this whole ghost of Georges St. Pierre lingering around. We've got the whole, Conor demanding a rematch, and the UFC, looks like they're, at least judging by Dana White's comments after UFC 242, seems like something that they would do if given the slightest provocation, if given any particular reason that we can just say, let's throw Conor in there because Ferguson doesn't want it or he can't take it or whatever. And that just seems like something they would do. And I don't think anybody would be in disagreement about that. So I'm kind of curious to see what's next. I mean, Justin Gaethje, assuming that Tony Khabib happens and Khabib remains undefeated, Justin Gaethje's probably the best bet of the current top contenders at lightweight to give Khabib some work. We always forget how good of a wrestler he is, what his credentials are in wrestling, because he prefers to just stand there and trade. But even this version of Gaethje that's more measured and patient poses a serious threat, even to the pressure of Khabib. So And also the way he's able to mix in these leg kicks. Of course, leg kicks against a takedown artist like Khabib are always dangerous because they could catch your leg, and run you down for an easy one. But if you've got the wrestling credentials of Justin Gaethje and you leg kick as hard as him, I think that's a calculated risk you can take. So I'm very anxious to see what that looks like, if that's the matchup that we in fact get. Of course, if it ends up being Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, I'm all for it. That's fantastic as well. So either way, I think we're in business. Now, as far as Cowboy goes, I see guys in the chat talking about Cowboy versus Paul Felder. I like that a lot. I like that fight a whole lot. Rob Iman and Tommaso Mark. Shout out to you, Tommaso Mark. Good to see you as well. I like that. I like, from a style perspective, that's fantastic. Paul Felder could definitely use more names on his resume. Cowboy fits the bill, and knowing him, he'd be ready to fight next week. So I say book that fight. I think that's a good one for both of them. But still, you can put together a Conor versus Cowboy fight, and I'm all for it. And really, if we're going to follow the Joe Silva style of matchmaking, that would make more sense than Paul Felder versus Cowboy. If we're following the winners fight winners, losers fight losers, that would make sense. It would be a big fight that keeps Conor away from the title belt right now. And I think that's very important too, to preserve some level of legitimacy for what remains I think the most prestigious title in mixed martial arts, the UFC lightweight title. Tommaso Mark saying Barboza versus Gregor Gillespie. Ooh, I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that at all. Gregor Gillespie is a guy who can use some names on his resume, and man, that is an ugly matchup for Barboza. That is a terrible matchup for him. So I think if you're trying to put Barboza out to pasture, if you're trying to officially make sure he is the one that's going to be building up the new names, yeah, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. But man, if you're Barboza, man, I don't think you want that. I don't think you want that fight. Let's see what we got. Rev saying Gaethje looks improved since the WSOF early UFC days. Still aggressive, but not as hittable or as reckless. Exactly. This version of Gaethje is a monster, because at the moment that he sees a flash of blood, he sees a flash of weakness, anything that he can capitalize on, any gap that he can just run in and just widen out, he will do it. He will turn into that reckless maniac at the drop of a hat, but he does not come in there bat out of hell, gone insane from jump. And that is very, very important. That is something I think one of the most dangerous type of fighters that you can ever be faced with is a measured brawler. Is someone who doesn't mind brawling, but they're technical with it. A technical brawler is probably the worst possible matchup for everybody, because this is a man who is willing to go through hell just for the opportunity to put you through it. And now doing it with more intelligence, doing it to where he's not exposing himself as much is a really, really scary proposition, man. Let's see, with Claude, 1, 2, 3, 4. Conor, Tony, and Poirier are top 3 behind Khabib. Justin needs to beat at least one of them before Khabib shot, in my opinion. I'm really not mad at that thought process. And you know what? Let me take a look at these rankings just to make sure that I'm not forgetting anybody here. But I'm not mad at that thought process at all. I mean, Gaethje did have a regrettable streak of finished losses, so very recently. So that is something to keep in mind. But you know, all the guys you name are the ones ranked right above him. So presuming that Conor is doing whatever Conor does, so I'm not sure what he's up to at this point, other than I guess healing his injuries. Yeah, Poirier just fought. Probably needs to take a little time off as well. If you can put Tony and Khabib together pretty soon and they have a fairly quick turnaround, yeah, Gaethje makes sense. I mean, even if it's just by default, it makes sense. But even if it's not by default, it makes a lot of sense. I am no way will complain about the number 5 contender fighting for the title. If the number one contender is the next in line already, and that fight is assumed to be the next one up, the number two contender is probably healing right now and mentally probably just needs a break as well, because he went on a dynamite run himself. And the number three guy, who also happens to be the biggest star in the sport, really doesn't deserve that rematch with Khabib. Just doesn't deserve it at all. Hasn't won a fight since 2016 or 2017? 2016. I think it was 2016 last time he won at UFC 205. So, I'm sorry. Like, I don't see how we can complain so much about Gaethje, but I understand your point. So yeah, I understand your point on that one. Tomaso said, I've been saying it for 7 months now. Conor versus Cowboy will sell out Dallas Cowboy Stadium. Conor versus a grappling dummy would sell out a stadium. You put Cowboy on there and just, wow. Like, how could you not love that fight? I still say that's a fight that should be made. Dr. Jones, PhD 62. Good to have a doctor in the chat. He says, I still want to see Gregor Gillespie versus Kevin Lee. Not mad at that at all. Kind of anxious to see what Kevin Lee is going to look like at 155 again, now that he's the TriStar Firas Zahabi enhanced version of Kevin Lee. And I think we take for granted how the death of his coach, Robert Follis, really affected him, and how he has essentially been a guy trying to coach himself. I mean, he had Dewey Cooper, some other guys around Extreme Couture, but no real focal point to bring it all together and to just know him mentally enough to put him in the right positions and say exactly what he needed to hear to perform at his optimal best. So I'm really anxious to see what Firas Zahabi can do with Kevin Lee, and the Gregor Gillespie matchup sounds fantastic. Gregor Gillespie, I'm really excited about him, if you couldn't tell. All right, so definitely got some good stuff in the chat following those remarks, but we do have some more UFC Vancouver to talk about, and we'll double back and we'll start running our mouths about everything else, time permitting. All right, so let's go ahead talk about this co-main event. Glover Teixeira, he wins a split decision over Nikita Krylov. I scored it 30-27 for Glover Teixeira. I saw a lot of scorecards on Twitter echoing that as well. I'm not mad that some people had it a little closer. I guess I'm not mad at it. I will say this. Nikita Krylov looked better than a 30-27 scorecard would indicate. I think he had enough moments in there to at least make you think a little bit before you wrote your 10 or your 9 down on your scorecard. I think he at least did that. But to say in any way, shape, or form that Nikita Krylov won that fight is laughable. A split decision there makes absolutely zero sense to me. I just can't. I can't comprehend that one. I'm not buying that one, Jack. Sorry. Jeez. But anyway, it's so crazy, man. We and when I say we, maybe I shouldn't say we, but I think there've been several attempts by a lot of people in the MMA space to want to put Glover Teixeira out to pasture, to want to retire this guy. And he's been around for a while. He has been. Let me just make sure I have my dates right. His first professional fight, WEC 3, June of 2002. So this guy has been an active competitor for 17 years, and really just running through guys through most of that time. Running through guys through most of that time until he met John Jones, and then Phil Davis. Glover Teixeira typically only loses to the best. John Jones, Phil Davis, Rumble Johnson, Alexander Gustafsson, and Corey Anderson. I think that is a fine list of gentlemen to have on your L column. No shame in losing to any one of those men, and they all have had a lot of success in the sport for a variety of reasons. Obviously, John Jones being the greatest fighter ever. Phil Davis, eventual Bellator champion. Anthony Johnson, like the boogeyman of light heavyweight, and soon to be heavyweight boogeyman if this comeback it comes to fruition. Alexander Gustafsson, who is perennial top contender and a guy who gave John Jones and Daniel Cormier fits. It was like the well established number two in the history of light heavyweight. I guess you could say he's the greatest number two of all time in the division. And then Corey Anderson, a guy who's perpetually looked over and just has a pretty difficult style to deal with for a guy like Glover Teixeira. So, Nikita Krylov, man, I'm not sure what to think of him because Krylov is never been a guy that really impressed me. And I know he's got like a pretty interesting record. I mean, you see all the finishes that he has, but I don't know. Something about Nikita Krylov just always seemed a little off to me, and I will say that this seemed to be his most complete performance, at least that I can recall off the top of my head. Now we'll look back to the Over St. Preux fight, the rematch that they had at what was that, UFC 236. But OSP looked like a shell of himself. OSP looked terrible in that fight. It's hard to say what Krylov had to offer because OSP really gave him nothing. Like, it was no challenge at all, at least from where I was sitting. Fabio Maldonado, I mean, really? Fabiano Maldonado is like the ultimate journeyman at this point. Emmanuel Newton, who obviously used to be Bellator champion, rough times for him, and we're going back a couple years now with some of these names. So before that, his UFC run, it looked great, aside from a couple of stumbles there, but definitely wasn't against the best of competition. Definitely wasn't. And every time he took a step up, he lost. So it's kind of like Krylov is still in that same boat. Now, of course, this is light heavyweight, and it doesn't take much to find yourself in a favorable position. But yeah, I'm not high on Nikita Krylov. Not high on him at all. Let's see here. We got Rob Iman dropping this little nugget on us, saying Glover Teixeira versus Volkan Ozdemir should be next. I'm not mad at that at all. I'm not mad at that at all. Now, let me take a look here because I don't know if Ozdemir is scheduled against anybody right now. I honestly just can't think of it off the top of my head, but I'm gonna check the Fight Finder and see what we got here. Yeah, no fight scheduled for Volkan Ozdemir, at least at the Sherdog Fight Finder is showing. Yeah, and he looked fantastic against Ilir Latifi. He looked much improved against Latifi. Yeah, I'm with that. I think it's a good fight for both of them. The winner of this fight kind of stays relevant to the light heavyweight title picture. Although, like I said, it's such a thin, shallow division that it wouldn't take much to get put back on the board. Now, good one here. Rob Iman suggesting Nikita Krylov versus Jimmy Crute should be next, and that makes all the sense in the world. That is a fantastic matchup. I think it's a fight that would provide a lot of entertainment value first, but also it's a fight that plays to where both of them really stand right now. Nikita Krylov he has cemented gatekeeper status at this point. Like, he is a gatekeeper, and I don't think there's any way around that. There's no way to talk him out of that status. I certainly don't think he's going to move beyond that. Jimmy Crute needs some development, clearly, and I think his loss tonight against Misha Cirkunov, I think that's the sort of loss that builds you up. That's the sort of loss that develops a fighter. And what better way to test that development on a fighter who we kind of know his ceiling? Jimmy Crute's got a lot of promise, and I think Nikita Krylov is I think we've seen the best that he has to offer, even if he's got, quite a few more wins left in him. And by no means am I saying like this guy needs to retire or anything, but I think we have a clear tier on where his talent level stops. So Jimmy Crute would be an excellent test for that. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this Jeff Hughes and Todd Duffy fight. So, I mean, this was a firefight. This was a very serious firefight. I will say one thing for sure that I feel like I was wrong on in my initial assessments of this. Todd Duffy did not look like a man who spent the last 4 years out of mixed martial arts, and not only out of mixed martial arts, but rehabbing injuries and stuff. Like there was some crazy accident at a gym he was training at where the cage floor collapsed and he fell and ended up blowing out his knee, like just wild freak accident. And then I think that knee got staph infection while he was in the hospital and stuff. So a lot of crazy things have happened to him from a health perspective, and so that just adds to 4 years off. Like your timing's gonna be wrong. You're gonna feel cold. You're gonna feel sloppy and nervous, and all these things that could go wrong with that level of a layoff. Yet, he came in there and looked pretty damn sharp. He looked pretty sharp, but he still looked like Todd Duffy to me. And he very well could have won that fight. I mean, Jeff Hughes was certainly rocked toward the end when the eye poke that ended up causing the stoppage. Before that happened, like it looked like Hughes was in big trouble, and he's against the fence taking shots and whatnot. But at the same time, man, Duffy had that chin way out there. He had that chin sky high, and Hughes was landing some bombs as well. One thing that I think we can pick up about Jeff Hughes is that from the Mo Green fight, like this is a guy who, if you give him a second or two, he will start figuring some shit out. He'll start figuring some things out, especially when it relates to distancing and pace. Like he will start finding something in there, and that's something he did against Mo Green. Now, of course, Todd Duffy being the power puncher that he is, you may not have the opportunity to download all that data before the power comes back to haunt you. But the guy has the ability to figure you out. So you gotta be cautious, and I think Todd Duffy has proven to not have the greatest of chins. So, yeah. Hughes could have still won that fight. Now let's go ahead and talk about this eye poke. Now the replay didn't make it look that bad. Didn't look that bad from like the thumb got in the eye and he kind of pushed off his head. Kind of hard to really say how hurt he was. And I don't want to play keyboard warrior here. But yeah, man, that could have been worse than what it looked like. So to all the hardcore guys on social media right now who are blasting Todd Duffy, calling him a quitter, and saying he gave up and he didn't want to be in there and all this stuff, please knock that all the way the fuck off. Just knock that all the way the fuck off, man. You don't know what's going on. Now, don't be surprised if we get a report talking about his cornea got scratched or something like that. It's very rare that a fighter is talking about immediately telling the ref and the doctor, like, I'm seeing double. Because that guarantees that the fight's going to get stopped. It's extraordinarily rare, especially at a point where he was winning, where he looked like he was on the verge of a finish. My initial thought was maybe Duffy is playing it up to take a little break and catch his breath. But then you want to take a breath at that moment where you got this guy against the fence and you're unloading on him? I don't know, man. I don't know. It just seems strange. And I think it's a perfectly logical conclusion to come to that maybe Todd Duffy, surprise, surprise, actually got hurt. Maybe he actually got hurt. Maybe everyone who is judging him on social media right now, calling him a quitter, and saying that he gave up, and I've seen the word coward thrown out there. I'm like, please don't ever walk to that man and say that shit to his face, because you will get your face rearranged. Okay? It is very possible that he actually was hurt. I think that's a very logical conclusion to come to. Now, yes, Duffy looked like he might have been running out of steam. Definitely a bit of gamesmanship to take a breather and using a foul to do so. Before we even move on this, because I don't know what. No, actually, no. I got the the card for the Tyson Fury fight on the TV that you can't see on screen right here. So I saw some walkouts. So I was like, I don't think Fury and Wallen are coming out just yet. So we got a little time to run our mouths here. But let's give it up for the gamesmanship moment of the evening, and that was from Jeff Hughes, where Hughes had his back against the fence. Duffy he grabs on the fence while he's kind of hugged around him, and then the ref says, he warns him to stop grabbing the fence or he'll take a point. And while Duffy is distracted by this warning from the ref, Hughes takes the time to reverse position and put Duffy's back against the fence. Brilliant. I loved it. Like, I loved it, man. That was fantastic. Just that little slight moment of distraction to go and make you move. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful, beautiful stuff there. All right. Let's see what else we got. What else was on the card here? All right. Oh, yeah, we definitely going to talk about this Michelle Pereira and Tristan Connolly fight. Man, I'll tell you one thing. You go out for a night of dancing, you get tired. One thing I would not recommend you do before you start a cage fight is to dance, okay? Pereira, man, he looked so gassed, so completely gassed. And this is so not what I think the UFC really wanted in this scenario. Now, forgive me for not remembering who Pereira's original opponent was, but Tristan Connolly was a replacement on 5 days' notice. Tristan Connolly is also native to Canada. I think he's native to the province that this fight took place in as well. So they went to a local guy that was there and could just, and I think this guy actually fights typically at 155. So for him to fight one of the bigger welterweights, by the way, who didn't make weight, who weighed in at 172 as opposed to the 171 with the 1 pound allowance, that's a big deal. It's a very big deal on 5 days' notice. And you look at Pereira's style, and this is a guy that the UFC clearly would want to do well. Why wouldn't they? The guy, Dr. Jones, PhD 6'2", saying, Pereira reminds me of welterweight Johnny Walker. Exactly what I was going to say, man. Exactly. This is like the welterweight version of Johnny Walker. He's dancing. He's smiling. He's dramatic and acrobatic and got these gymnast moves, and he flips and he does all this crazy stuff that's just super athletic. Problem is, man, you can't keep doing that shit without gassing out. And if you do half of it before the bell even rings, you've got a choreographed dance routine. By the way, one of homie's cornermen had zero rhythm on the steps, but we're gonna let my man slide on that. It looked like he didn't. Yeah, he's probably the one coach that was advising, let's not do this. Let's just go in there and fight. So we'll give him a pass on that one. But anyway, you had this choreographed dance routine. You had break dancing going on in the intro, and then in that first round, it looked like a gymnastics meet. You know, he was flipping and spinning and break dancing and all sorts of wild kicks, and that stuff takes energy. It takes a lot of energy, and you cannot sustain that. He had to have been 4 or 5 flying knees in that first round, just out of the thin blue sky. Like not even well set up. Not even like, all right, he's got him coming in for a takedown and does a flying knee, or he's got a punch combination going, and maybe he sees him ducking under hooks, so he throws the flying knee or something like that. Not even set up in a technical way, just to do it because it looks cool. And granted, it looked really cool. Not always the most effective thing. And when you're Connolly now, I don't know a whole lot about him, but judging by what he did in this fight, that is a meat and potatoes fighter right there. That's a guy who, no matter what sort of flash and style and substance you have to what you do, he is just going to put his nose to the grindstone and work. And all of that is merely a distraction. All of that is merely just an annoyance, as he does exactly what he was going to do no matter what you did. So Tristan Connolly, man, having sort of like his Charlie Brenneman, Rick Story moment there, to get called up at the last minute to fight in his hometown and get the win. Get the win over a guy who was heavily hyped. I mean, he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was the the biggest underdog on this card. If he wasn't, I'd be very surprised. But he, from what I remember, he was the biggest underdog on this card. Kill me in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but to my knowledge, that's what happened. All right. Let's see what else. Well, I guess we'll talk about the scoring of this fight as well. So, that first round, I can understand if you gave it to Pereira. I could understand that, but I gave that one to Connolly, and I think it's just as I said before, man. The flash and the style was really cool, but it didn't look very effective to me. What Connolly did was defend those crazy flying knees. He took a couple of body punches here and there, but he got takedowns. He threatened with submissions. He put pressure on him, and that's when you started seeing Pereira start to gas. Second round, I gave to Pereira, but barely. I could have gone either way. I mean, I really only gave it to him because he showed some good top control, I think, in the latter half of the second round. And then Connolly easily won that last round. And Pereira is very fortunate that he did not get finished. He's very fortunate. He actually made it to the final bell. Because to one, miss weight, and two, to get finished in that same fight, it's a bad look. That is a very bad look. If he wasn't the flashy, like, exciting, entertaining guy that he was, like, that's chopping block material. And I know whenever the words cut are mentioned or drop from the roster, I know, Rob, I know you're getting excited. I know you want to cut some people, and I'm sure if I scroll up in these comments, I'll see some people you think need to be cut. But but Pereira, his job is safe for right now. Let's see. The suggestion that he fight Zach Otto, I'm not mad at that. That would present a similar sort of style challenge. I think that Otto is a guy who wants to just grab a hold of you and stall you out and everything, and Pereira would have to dial back the theatrics to get that done. Someone suggested me on Twitter also that perhaps he should just move up to 185 and he can dance and flip a little bit more, but he won't take his body through the crazy weight cut. I'm not opposed to that as well, but I've never been in the same room as Michel Pereira, and I don't remember seeing like video of him standing next to too many fighters. So I'm trying to get a gauge of what he would look like compared to the average middleweight fighter, and see because he's a big welterweight, but that doesn't necessarily make him middleweight size. So be interesting there to see what he'd look like at 185. But I think that talk is kind of premature. He missed weight one time. If it happens again, if it becomes a constant thing, then yeah, he looks ugly, like death on the scales, then we need to have that conversation again. But I think he's all right. Let's see here. He's got techniques he'll lean on and telegraph way in advance, so you always know what's coming. Like his rear teep followed by lead body shovel hook. Yeah, that I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Jones. That shovel hook, well, you could see that a mile away. He threw that he threw that from a mile away. Now, he had enough reach to where it was landing, but you're not going to pull that off on a lot of guys. Keep in mind, like I said, Tristan Connolly is a lightweight who just came up for this fight. I don't think you're going to pull that off on a lot of the welterweights out there. That you're probably going to eat a punch before that wind up to that body shot is ever going to dream of being successful. Let's see here. Yeah, Connolly will go back to 155 as he should. This was just a one-off to get in the UFC. And unlike a lot of guys who take that one-off fight at a higher weight class and on short notice to get in the UFC, he actually walks away with a win. So he's got momentum going into his UFC career, and that is, and then especially on a big stage like this, to have the biggest upset of the card, like that's huge. That's huge. So, and 155, man, is a wealth of talent, and Tristan Connolly has the opportunity to fight his way through that Shark Tank. So, congrats to him. Tommaso saying, I'm no hater. I love Michelle. I just think he should be slightly embarrassed, missing weight, dancing, and gassing out. Like, really, dude. Yeah, I think that's a sentiment that a lot of people are sharing right now with you, Tommaso. Not a good look, man. The theatrics are fun. It's entertaining. I laughed. When he tried to do like the backflip to ground and pound, like stomping and what, that was really cool. The jumping off the cage and he backflipped to start the fight. That was cool. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed looking at his walkout and everything. But man, if that's interfering with you actually getting business done, it's time to cut that shit out. It's time to cut that shit out, and especially in a fight like this where Connolly was supposed to get washed. Make no mistake, Connolly was brought in to lose. He was supposed to get served up on a platter. This was an execution that we were supposed to witness. Instead, we saw a fight. Props to Connolly for that one. All right, so what was next on the main card? Oh, yes, Antonio Carlos Jr., Shoeface. He fights Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall gets a decision win. Gets a split decision win here. Now, this fight was definitely interesting to score. My score was 29-27, and before there is a riot in the chat, before someone puts a hit out on me, let me explain myself. So, first round, I gave to Shoeface. Now, I know he got his nose broken in that way. I think it was like a really hard jab that did it. But most of the round, he spent out positioning Hall. He was able to get him on the floor, hold him down. He wasn't able to do a lot of damage, and I know a lot of people are saying the damage, and correct me if I'm wrong, damage is not a scoring criteria technically, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's how I understand it to be in this present moment. But he outpositioned him through most of that round, was able to control him on the ground for such a long period of time. And also, Hall's offense, while it did break his nose, he landed a couple shots, but that was kind of it. That was really kind of it. He clearly was a better striker, like, make no mistake about it. But nothing really happened off those strikes, aside from the broken nose off of that one punch. So that's where what I say about that first round. Second round. Yeah, this was a round for Hall. This was a clear round for Hall. He dropped him with a cross, and it was kind of nice how that was set up, because he was having a lot of success with his jab, and it looked like he was only really throwing jabs. And then kind of right when Shoeface is kind of expecting that jab, that right cross comes and rearranges his life. So I really thought that was a wise play on his part. But Shoeface got back up after this. So Hall jumped in his guard and is trying to land ground and pound. Wisely decides to get up. Just deciding to jump in Shoeface's guard when you don't have to. When you're the striker, the caliber of Uriah Hall, and you're having success on the feet, no point in reintroducing his element to it. So stand back up and make him come to you at that point. But if you're going to do that, know that he is going to die for a leg at that point. Like, that's going to be his wisest course of action, is to die for a leg. And Hall looks so unprepared for that immediate shot that it was very surprising. Very, very surprising. I thought that would have been the first thing that he should have been watching out for, what was that shot. Now, of course, in the last round, Shoeface dominated the position easily, like dominated that position. I don't think there was any controversy over Shoeface winning that last round. However, I scored that round a 10-8 because Hall did literally nothing. He did nothing in that round to threaten anything. I don't remember him providing any real offense at all for that entire 5 minutes, while the other guy is doing essentially what he wants to do. Sounds like a 10-8 round to me. That's not a hill I'm ready to die on, but that's what it sounds like to me. Let's see here. What else we got? So I did just trash Jaron Vallel for his absolutely terrible performance in the main event, but let's give him credit for not listening to that dumbass crowd chanting "Stand him up" or "Stand them up" when Shoeface has got the body triangle. They're on the ground and Hall is stuck, and there's nothing he can do. And Shoeface is working on furthering the offense. While he was not successful in creating damage, creating a lot of damage, I should say, or with submission attempts, he was working. So, the idea that the crowd was demanding that they stand them up, just ridiculous. Like, it's like you haven't watched MMA since like '97 or something. Like, what the fuck? Like, they fight on the ground sometimes. It happens. Watch, like, there's boxing on right now. Watch that if you're so adverse to a ground fight. All right. So yeah, I know it's some other comments and questions and stuff in the chat, and I will get to those. But we're gonna talk about one last fight, and that was the main card opener. Misha Cirkunov gets the Peruvian necktie over Jimmy Crute, and we kind of touched on this briefly with some of the matchmaking that has been proposed in the comments. But Jimmy Crute, man, I think he lost this due to youthful enthusiasm and reckless aggression, because, man, he fought Misha Cirkunov's fight all the way. Cirkunov, I think, that was a veteran savvy thing right there. I think he very intentionally wanted to goad Crute into some sort of wildness, so that way he can get that takedown easier and work the way he wanted to work. And even still, Crute was athletic and strong enough and good enough from a technical standpoint, although not a lot of technique he used on the ground, but still, he's good enough to get out of some bad positions that Cirkunov put him in. He was good enough to do that, and then he kind of jumped back into the recklessness. And Cirkunov, veteran savvy, veteran move, goes ahead and keeps that sort of wildness going on just long enough for him to sync up the submission. I think that was a very good performance. And once again, we've been proven to be taking these fighters out to pasture a little bit too quickly. Now, I believe that, and I think a lot of people will agree, that this fight was made to make Jimmy Crute look good. I think this fight was made with the sole purpose of putting Jimmy Crute over. We know this is a guy that Dana White is high on. Let's not forget that the UFC 234, I believe it was, press conference, or was it 236? Whatever. The one in Australia. Israel Adesanya, Anderson Silva card. That was 234. Okay. So, you remember that press conference where one of the reporters is saying, like, hey, this card kind of blows, and it's only the top two fights? And Dana White's response is, have you ever heard of Jimmy Crute? Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Jimmy Crute was he's the only fighter from the Oceanic region and on the Contender Series. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to say he was the first international fighter that was on the Contender Series. I think maybe there was I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that. I could be wrong, but I think so. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I think. Yeah, so, yeah, this is a fight. Jimmy Crute's going to get better from this fight. Misha Cirkunov. Let me see. We got suggestions for Cirkunov to fight the winner of Ian Cutelaba and Khalil Roundtree, or maybe Tyson Pedro. I like those, really. I think, and Cirkunov would. I think he is, as of now, ranked 15. Yes, he's ranked 15 now. Yeah, why not? Those sound good. Those sound fine. I would say, yeah, why not? Because all the other people I'm thinking of already booked. So, yeah, those aren't bad options right there. Okay, so we're not really going to get into the prelims of this. So I'll go ahead, because I do want to save a little time to watch this Tyson Fury fight, which should be starting pretty soon. But let's go ahead and go back on these comments and see what fun things I can address for you guys. Tommaso asking, will I have time for some MSG talk? Yeah, everybody wants to talk about MSG, huh? Masvidal and Diaz. Why not? Got some questions about that card. Lay them on me. So for everyone who hasn't heard or watched the last version of The Trenches, the live chat show I do for SureDog.com on that YouTube page, definitely had some extended conversation about the BMF, the baddest motherfucker title, that is up for grabs at UFC 244, I believe that is, in New York. So, what do you guys think of this belt? What are your initial thoughts? Now, one of my thoughts is that this is a good thing that the fighters are able to, team up and make these demands like this, and hopefully they get paid like it's a legitimate title fight. So I'm not mad at that aspect of it. Of course, the sporting integrity aspect of it does worry me some, because this is the sort of thing where this gets popular, which it will be. It will be. The name is intriguing. The names fighting for it are intriguing, and it's in the biggest media market in the country. This is going to be a blockbuster smash hit. And that fight doesn't need a belt, by the way. Doesn't need a BMF title or any sort of artificial stakes attached to it. It's just a great fight. It's a fantastic fight. It's a fight that everybody with a functioning brain wants to see. So I'm all for it. But the title itself is the sort of thing that will do more work to delegitimize the actual belts. The UFC has done a fantastic job of delegitimizing their own titles for the past several years now. So the unearned title shots, the plethora of interim belts, the threats to strip champions for whatever arbitrary reasons, are all things that take some of the luster off these belts. They definitely take some luster off those titles, off the actual titles. And this is the sort of thing, something that's rooted in the mentality of the just bleed faith, that's rooted in the mind state of a casual fan that looks at MMA like an extension of a street fight, and not as a sport, and not as the collection of different martial arts disciplines. And it puts that on a pedestal that could very well overshadow the actual belts. So, you ask any of these casual fans, you ask a lot of diehard fans as well, would you rather see the BMF belt, the winner of Nate and Jorge, be defended against, let's just say, the winner of tonight's main event, Justin Gaethje? Or do you want to see Kamaru Usman, fight the legitimate number one contender, and which should be Colby Covington? From a style perspective, from an entertainment standpoint, a lot of people are going to say that BMF belt sounds better, especially the casuals. And that's the audience that the UFC is always trying to cater to. That's the audience that they're always trying to rope in. So while this is fantastic, that this fight that has great personalities attached to it, that has the style makings of a classic, of a barn burner, is a pay-per-view headliner, and we didn't have to disrupt the legitimate title picture. We could be interrupting the legitimate title picture. I could have sworn I just saw in the chat that Rob saying the winner of Diaz Masvidal will likely leapfrog boring ass Colby Covington for next dibs at Usman, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. That is exactly what I'm talking about. I understand that sentiment, because Colby Covington is not the guy known for action fights. Neither is Kamaru Usman. And in fact, they could have a snooze of a fight. But if we're talking about the best welterweights in the world, then that's what it is. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Now, what I'm not okay with is a consistent line to bypass legitimate ranking systems. Now, I know the UFC does a piss poor job at rankings. I know they do a piss poor job at maintaining meritocracy, but I do think it's important that we at least value it. We, as in the educated fan, we, as in the people that are doing live streams talking about this, and the people who are sitting there watching live streams about this after the fact. We are the educated ones. We are the ones who know what the hell we're talking about 9 times out of 10. So it should be important to us to uphold that, to uphold the sanctity of the sport as a sport. And yes, I know MMA is not exactly a sport in the classical sense, because the subjective nature of judging, the whims of promoters, and the cult of personality that overshadows some of the technique and skill that's necessary to make your way through this sport. So I get that. But it's got to be important to somebody, because to WME, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about the dollar. And I'm not, pointing my finger at them in an accusatory way because of that, because they are a business. Their objective is to make money. I get that. But that shouldn't be our concern. We should want to see a good sport. We should want to see the best fight the best. Sometimes the best aren't the most exciting, and that's okay. That is all right with me. Let's see. Tomas was saying, do you think Luque can get around Wonder Boy's defense? No, I'd see Wonder Boy winning that, man. If it's Wonder Boy the way we normally know him to be, I think a guy like Luque is custom made for him, because Luque is going to want to come forward. He's going to be throwing bombs, and one of the last things you want to do against a karate expert like Wonder Boy is charge in. You don't want to get too reckless moving forward against a guy like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Let's see, what else we got? Who should Lawler fight next, Ponzinibbio or Mike Perry? Oof. Man, I think it's just a matter of what direction we want to go with Robbie Lawler, because Santiago Ponzinibbio is the legitimate guy. But at this point, I kind of think, I don't want to say we're going to take that as a warm-up fight, but Ponzinibbio's ranked 8. Lawler's ranked 13. He should be fighting somebody higher than that. And he's been sitting out too long. I mean, if it's like, okay, as a tune-up fight, all right, I like it for Ponzinibbio. But if we're okay with the decline of Robbie Lawler, and that's just what it is, and I think that's what it is at this point, I don't really think there's much denying that. And we're also okay with the idea of Mike Perry not threatening for the title anytime soon. Put them together, man. It's going to be a great action fight. Put it together. At this point, that's kind of the best I think we'll see for Robbie Lawler in terms of what he has to offer, or what his best use in the MMA world is. Put him in those fun fights. I'm trying to think who suggested this. Someone in media suggested like him and Anderson Silva or something like that. Like, you got to just have fun with it at this point, because Robbie Lawler, I think, is very clearly past his expiration date in terms of the elite of the welterweight division. Let's see. It's mostly, I'd like to see Woodley versus Leon Edwards. That's definitely pay-per-view worthy, but I don't think they can main event a fight night. Not sure it'll draw enough. Yeah, I Woodley versus Leon Edwards is one I've been calling for a little while now. I originally called for Woodley to fight the winner of Edwards and Gunnar Nelson after he lost the belt to Kamaru Usman. I still stand by that. I think that's a fantastic fight. It poses problems for both of them, and it'll show a lot where both of them stand. Now, Woodley is in kind of a unique space right now because this Colby Covington drama, because this BMF thing. There are a lot of strange things going on at welterweight, or in the welterweight sphere, I should say. So I don't know. If you're Woodley, you can just wait it out a little bit, see how some of these things play out. For all we know, Woodley could be negotiating right now for the rematch against Usman. He could be. And I'm not the one in favor of that because Usman very, very clearly won that, and I don't think that warrants an immediate rematch. But considering the number of defenses that he had, okay, I guess. I mean, if you're Woodley, definitely take that fight, but I'd rather see Woodley fight a Leon Edwards. That sounds like it makes a lot more sense to me. Let's see. Tommaso Marcin, I would have done Darren Till versus Anderson Silva in Brazil. Damn you, that is impressive. I like that. I like that a lot. Robert saying Robbie Lawler versus Muhammad Bilal is one that I wouldn't mind seeing. Who wouldn't mind seeing that? That sounds fantastic. But that's exactly the sort of matchmaking that makes the most sense for Robbie Lawler at this point. All right, everybody. So, I think I am going to wrap this up for the evening. So let me just go ahead and run down a couple little things for you. So the Good, Bad, and the Ugly, my normal post-fight column, will be going live tomorrow. I'm going to start writing that pretty much as I'm watching the Tyson Fury fight. Ask Ant, the mailbag column, I don't know if it should have come out today. It should have come out today. I don't know if it did or not. But I definitely reference the main event of the fight that we just saw. And I hope whoever edited it, changes that little bit up because I wrote it with some uncertainty about who was the winner, obviously. So I intended for that to come out last night, but we'll see. Anyway, yeah, so there have been some internal things going on without boring you kind folks in the chat about the details as far as my publication home. I'm not going to go into the details, but you could go ahead and look up some news articles and find out a little bit about the situation. But it's caused somewhat of a shakeup. So some of the usual programming of Sherdog might be changing. The trenches will still be going on. As far as I know, my homie Jason Burgos will be out, at least temporarily. Of that, Ben Duffy will be stepping in his place to host that show with me on Wednesday evenings on the Sherdog YouTube page. Off the Chain, the panel discussion show. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but we did about, I think, like 10 or 11 episodes. We had to go on a temporary hiatus, and that actually the Access TV thing kind of messed us up a little bit too because we had guests lined up from Access TV. So we had Ron Kruk, and I think Milicic was going to come on. And Phoenix Carval, I think she was scheduled as well. So we had a little shake up there, but there is a possibility that the panel discussion show will be moved to this channel, to the Walkout Network. So that's something that we discussed, and looking forward to that. There's also the possibility being floated that this show, The Walk of Shame, will be moved to Sherdog. Well, actually, not The Walk of Shame. I'm keeping the name The Walk of Shame, but a post-fight show like this with myself might make its way to Sherdog. It might stay here. Just follow along on my Twitter, which you see the name and stuff right there for some of those updates. But a couple little things going on internally, and of course, as you guys know, a lot of drama in the household right now because my wife is expecting. So we've got a baby on the way, and we're about to hit the third trimester, so stress is at an all-time high. I'm losing my mind, and you get to watch it. So, yeah, so that's that. But, yeah, so thank you to all for jumping in this chat. Thank you for keeping this conversation moving forward. Straight up and down, I miss doing this. I really love doing the Walk of Shame, and I'm very happy to see I took some time off. And I came back, and some very familiar faces are on this chat, jumping in, adding to the conversation, just like always, like we never missed a day. I love and appreciate all of you. So you know what you got to do. You got to stay beautiful. You got to stay positive. And through it all, you got to stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.